Far Cry is a great series, and one of the greatest series Ubisoft have ever created. The Far Cry series has many highs and a couple low points, but today I want to go on a game-by-game basis and talk about my least favorite part of each Far Cry game. Before we get started though, I'm not going to be including the Instinct spin-off series from Far Cry 1. I personally not spent enough time with all of those games to kind of really judge them fairly. Now, let's not waste any more time and let's get straight into the very first Far Cry game. Far Cry 1 was the one to start it all, but it's the most different and most unique of the franchise. As Far Cry 1 was created by Crytek, who you might know from the Crysis series. Ubisoft bought the rights of the franchise from Crytek, and then Ubisoft turned the series into what we know it as today. But Far Cry 1 makes it kinda hard to pick the worst part because it's, well, almost a completely different game than every other Far Cry game. Like, this game has mutants and stuff. It's completely different and is more sci-fi than any of the other games. I think that's the worst part, to be honest. This game has no place in the Far Cry universe at all. I don't even think it's canon in the Far Cry universe. It's basically been removed from history by Ubisoft. The same goes for the Instinct series, which was created by Ubisoft, by the way. That's also been completely forgotten by Ubisoft. So that's kind of the worst part of the first game. It just has no place in the franchise. It created the Far Cry franchise, but it actually has no purpose or any place in the entire franchise. It has no connection to the rest of the games, which kind of sucks. Far Cry 2 took a radically different approach than the first game. It went fully open world instead of the semi-open world levels of the first game. Far Cry 2 is a game that I'm actually not that fond of. It's a game I do enjoy, but there's a lot of things that just annoy me. Just a lot of little things that annoy me in this game. The thing that annoyed me the most in this game has to be the weapons. The weapon jamming system in Far Cry 2 was so goddamn annoying. I swear every time I go into combat, my gun would just start jamming. I kinda wish it was a feature you could just toggle and turn it off if you don't like it. Because I know some people like the idea and like the feature, but personally it just threw me off the combat. I kind of wish there was a setting where you could just turn off the weapon jamming system, because I didn't like it very much. I also just wasn't the biggest fan of the lineup of weapons in the game. Not to say the weapons were bad by any means, but there just wasn't a gun that I would say that was my favourite weapon, or a weapon I really liked to use, or I would always pick up. They were all just kind of meh, and they kind of blended together in my opinion. I don't really have a favourite, but that's just a personal opinion. Far Cry 3 is easily one of the best in the entire Far Cry series, but it does have some flaws, and it's not a 100% perfect game at all. But my biggest problem, and my biggest flaw, I think, with Far Cry 3 has to be the entire game post-Vaas. Vaas was a great villain, and once the game kills him off, we're left with Hoyt, and Hoyt just isn't a great villain. He shares a game with Vaas, and I think that's the problem. He's just a stereotypical kind of bad guy. And, he's sharing a game with Vaas. Vaas is like one of the best video game villains ever. Like, it just makes Hoyt look much worse, and he probably actually is. Just him being a meh villain isn't actually my big problem, it's his whole section of the game. His soldiers are annoying and not very fun, will have less personality than the pirates, his island's worse, and just again, in general, he's just not a very great villain. I know some people are going to disagree with me, and that's 100% okay, but that's just my thoughts and my opinion on the Hoyt part of Far Cry 3. Blood Dragon is the first spin-off we'll be talking about today. Blood Dragon might be one of the greatest in the entire Far Cry series. Blood Dragon though has one problem that annoys me the most, and it's, well, blood dragons. I wasn't actually a big fan of the Blood Dragon enemies. I didn't find them fun at all to fight. I enjoyed everything else in Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, but the actual Blood Dragon enemy type was just really boring. I didn't enjoy the fights. I thought the fights could have had a bit more variety and better design. But to be honest, I love Blood Dragon. It's one of the most fun entries in the entire series. I love the themes, I love the settings, the dialogue. It doesn't take itself very seriously. The story, it's all amazing. I really do like Blood Dragon, but the actual Blood Dragons were actually not that great in my opinion. Far Cry 4 is my all-time favourite Far Cry game, so I definitely struggled trying to pick a negative from the game. I almost loved every little thing in the game, and I don't think any game in the series has ever come as close to being as good as Far Cry 4. But I did recently replay Far Cry 4 last year, and I cannot lie, those Shangri-La missions are still the worst part of the game. I wasn't big on them when I first played the game, and when I replayed the game last year, I disliked them even more. I just find the Shangri-La missions useless, to be honest. They're boring, they're repetitive, and I just couldn't be bothered to play them again. I know some people really do like the Shangri-La missions, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, but to me, I just found them really unfun and repetitive. Thankfully though, if you do play the game, you don't have to finish them all. You think you have to do 1 or 2 Shangri-La missions, and then you can move on and you never have to play them ever again, which is a big positive because you can just completely skip over it. Far Cry Primal is a game that a lot of people really like, and I don't agree. Primal to me just wasn't a game I was ever interested in. It's not a setting I like at all. I get why some people like the game, as the Stone Age is not a setting that's commonly explored in many games. But for me, the Stone Age just wasn't a setting I'm a fan of. And as you might guess, the thing I hate the most in this game is, of course, the setting. I'm just not that big on the whole Stone Age stuff. It's not bad by any means, but it just doesn't work for me. It's just the only game in the series I also haven't finished. I've never beat the game, and I don't think I ever will. The Stone Age stuff, it's just not for me. It's not kind of why I play Far Cry's for the Stone Age stuff. And I don't think Primal's a bad game, by the way. It's just a game that just personally doesn't work for me. Its setting just doesn't work for me, and it just doesn't appeal to me at all. But it's probably not a bad game. I'm just not a big fan of the Stone Age stuff. Far Cry 5 is a fantastic game, and it's definitely one of the best in the entire series. Far Cry 5's gameplay and world are so utterly fantastic, and I loved almost every minute I spent exploring the world of Hope County. But there is one issue I have with Far Cry 5, and it's the story. Joseph Seed is a fine villain, to be honest. I've got no problem with Joseph Seed. But my problem is the whole voiceless protagonist. It really ruined the story for me. I don't like it in games when characters are just sitting speaking to me and my character just never responds. Just kind of sitting staring blankly at them. It just rips me out of the story, and I just didn't enjoy the story very much because of this, because I think if there was a voice protagonist, I would have enjoyed the game a lot more. Other than the voiceless protagonist though, Far Cry 5 is truly amazing, and you should 100% play it if you haven't already. As even though I'm not a big fan of the story because of the voiceless protagonist and it just didn't really grab me, the gameplay in the world of Far Cry 5 is the best in the series. Like, there is genuinely no competition. The gameplay and the combat is fantastic, and Hope County has got to be one of the best open worlds we've ever had in the series. So yeah, definitely give Far Cry 5 a shot if you've never played it. Far Cry New Dawn is the worst entry in the Far Cry series ever, in my opinion. I loved the idea of a post-apocalypse America. I thought it could be really cool. And the setting could have been one of my favourites in the entire of the spin-off games. But the looter-shooter elements, crafting systems, home-based stuff, and the weak villains all combine to create the worst in the series. It's pretty hard to pick my least favourite part of New Dawn, but I have to go with the looter-shooter stuff. I like looter-shooter games, I really do, but Far Cry should never have become one. If you want to explore, nope, you can't do that, because you'll walk into a base and there's a level 3 enemy there. You can't take him down, because you need to get the level 3 enemy takedown skill, and you can't use your gun, because it's level 1. You'll just be shooting little peas at them, and they'll just bounce off him, and he'll just immediately kill you. The looter-shooter elements literally killed my want to explore the world of Hope County. It's a damn shame, because New Dawn's world is actually quite pretty. I really like the world. It's really beautifully designed. I love all the colourful parts of it. It's really nice. It's just the looter-shooter stuff drags it down so much, because I can't explore. I have to basically beat the entire game to explore the world. I'm just never going to understand why Ubisoft ever thought it was a good idea to shove leveled enemies and leveled weapons and crafting into a Far Cry game. It's just such a bad idea. But actually, I guess we do know why, and it's because in New Dawn, you can buy Far Cry credits, because for a low price of $9.99, you can just buy a max level gun and steamroll your way through the entire game in hours. Yeah, thank you, Ubisoft. And there we come to the most recently released entry in the series, Far Cry 6. I honestly don't hate or love Far Cry 6. It's the most meh and basic game in the series. It's kind of like if you took Far Cry 5 and you put a new coat of paint on it, but that coat of paint is just worse in every way. It's got an okay story, I quite like Danny as a protagonist, but the combat is just a major downgrade from 5. And that's my least favourite part of the game, is the combat of Far Cry 6. It took a lot of inspiration from New Dawn, and well, it added health bars to enemies. It kind of turned them into bullet sponges. Thankfully though, if you do a headshot, it will one-shot the enemy. And also, what the hell's with the ammo system? Why is there like 5 different ammo types, but there's only like 1 or 2 you should actually use? The ammo system feels it's just weird, like, just remove it, to be honest. And the health bars, and like, there's a lot of New Dawn inspiration in 6, and like, I actually didn't hate the gear system, I will say, the combat and the gear system. I was okay with that, but it's just the ammo types. The ammo types are just so useless. And the health bars, and yeah, I just hope in future Far Cry games, with Far Cry New Dawn and 6, I hope they had like, kind of what Ghost Recon Breakpoint had, 2 modes. An immersive mode, where like, they're not bullet sponges, no health bars, and you can immediately kill them. And you can have like the looter shooter mode where, they've got health bars and levels and all that for the people who like that. Because, my god, I really hated the health bars and ammo system and all that in 6 and New Dawn. And that's my thoughts on the Far Cry series and the worst part of each entry so far. I'm excited to see what's next for the franchise. I do wonder when we're going to get that Far Cry 6 spin-off game, because we've had a Far Cry spin-off every game since 3. We had 3, Blood Dragon, 4, Primal, so I'm wondering when Far Cry 6 is going to get a spin-off, and I wonder what the setting will be. I hope it's good. Anyway, thank you for watching. I've been the Intel, and have a lovely day. Have